Four Relational Germs, Risk Factors that Lead to Marital Distress. Presented by Alan Bohnhoff, LAPC, at the Choosing to Care Conference 2017 on February 4th, 2017.
What's the goal of this workshop? Start out with what it's not. Big shot psychology expert will give us all the answers. That's not what we're doing today. I'm not a big shot. There's no such thing as a psychology expert. That's kind of like a unicorn. This doesn't exist. I certainly don't have all the answers, but I am excited about this material, and I think it is helpful. So what do we want to do with that? First, I want to talk about just some basics of marital communication, then get into really talking about these four relational germs. We'll talk about that and why they're so dangerous and so toxic. We're going to use some actual couple conversations to learn to sort of like recognize this. How do I know when that one's happening? So what I want you to do is think about your worst conflict, and I want you to share that. No, not really. That's a joke. Everybody has a sigh of relief after that. But I'm going to ask for your participation. What we want to do is some actual role plays of conversations, but they're different names. All you have to do is read them. But I need some volunteers who will be willing to do these for me. So do I have a couple that would like to? And then finally, the last goal is how do we avoid this stuff? And when we see it, what do we do? So we want to talk about communication, and more specifically, communication in marriage. I think of communication as the lifeblood of the marriage relationship. Well, I think the blood is a good illustration of communication because, it brings good things into all the cells of our body. And it also takes some of the bad stuff out. And communication does that. We need that. If your heart is beating and your blood is flowing, you know that you're alive. If it stops, you're not alive. And that's kind of how it is with marriage. I believe one of the things that causes marriages to die is lack of good communication. So it really is the lifeblood of marriage. It's the indispensable factor that provides strength and vitality. Think about that. Can you have a strong, vital marriage without good communication? I don't think so. The only way to do that is to have good communication. But communication is complicated. It's a behavior, right? It's something we do, but it also involves thoughts, feelings, experiences, values, priorities, judgments, and other things. It's not just information going from me to you. It involves all these things. And it's very complex, but without it, the relationship dies, as I mentioned before. What is healthy communication? How do you know if you have healthy communication? Is it just it's healthy because it's positive? Everything we talk about is always positive? No, that's not real. There are positives and negatives that we have to communicate about. So that's not really a good definition. Does it mean that we agree all the time? No. Disagreement is inevitable. When you have two individuals, there is going to be disagreement. So that's not a good definition. What about arguing or not arguing? No. Arguing is another one of those things that's going to happen. If you have two people, you're not always going to agree, and sometimes you're going to argue. A lot of times argument gets a bad rap because we think it's something that's negative. It doesn't have to be. A lot of times argument it's really presenting our case. It's really explaining why we think the way we do, why we feel the way we do. Think of it like a lawyer. When they're arguing in court, it's not that they're mad. It's that they're presenting their case. They're talking about why they feel the way they do. And if we feel differently, then argument is going to be a part of the equation. It's not about not having disagreements. It's not about not arguing. It's not about not having conflict, because that's going to happen as well. What it is about is how we handle conflict, arguments, disagreements. The way we handle it is what makes it healthy, not having it. Again, I think this is kind of foundational in the rest of the stuff we're going to talk about. Okay, what about the environment for healthy communication? What does the relationship have to look like and feel like for healthy communication to happen? I think the biggest factor is safety. If If I feel like my spouse is dangerous, is that an environment for healthy communication? Not really, because that produces fear. We don't like to be in that situation where we're afraid, and it keeps us from being able to communicate well. What about risk? Man, it feels risky talking to you. I have to walk on eggshells. No, again, that's a fear-based thing, and I don't feel safe in that situation. Particularly if I feel like in some way you're going to harm me, I'm afraid, and that can't be a good environment. And then the one that probably most of us would deal more with than the others is a feeling of rejection. If I feel like when we go into this conversation I'm going to be rejected, am I going to do it? Am I really going to open up? Probably not. So it's important to eliminate as much as possible these elements of danger, fear, risk. And as you'll see when we get into talking about these germs, there is this feeling of unsafeness in the relationship. And if we don't get rid of that, we'll never be able to really communicate in a great way. And the key is acceptance, not rejection. Acceptance draws the other person out. Rejection holds them at bay. So that's the kind of environment we have to create in our marriages. And one of the main ways of doing that is to eliminate these germs that we're going to talk about. You might say, well, we're going to talk about healthy conflict handling. Why don't we just paint the picture of healthy conflict handling in a positive way? One thing, that's kind of hard to do, and I don't think it is as motivating to us as the other approach, which is, let's paint the picture of what it isn't supposed to look like. And guess what? All of us are going to resonate with this. We see it. I guarantee you, by the time you walk out, you'll say, yeah, I see that. Approaching it this way seems kind of negative, but I think it communicates better because it is graphic. You can see it, you can feel it, you can almost taste it. It's real. A lot of us, this is what we're dealing with, and it's simple. How many ways do you think there are of communicating in an unhealthy way? You might think, hundreds, I don't know. It would seem like a lot. Well, it turns out there are really 4 unhealthy patterns that research has borne out over and over and over. They're the key ones. If you can eliminate those 4, then you have a pretty healthy marriage. You have pretty healthy communication. So you'll see what that is, and I'll talk about a little bit more about that. So what we're talking about is patterns. Every relationship falls into patterns over time. We start addressing each other in a certain way. We know a lot about the other person, and we have expectations, and we have assumptions, and all those things. And so we start having these patterns. Some are good, and some are very negative. This, what I'm presenting, is based on 30 years of research with couples, and where the reason the 30 is important is about 30 years ago is when it became feasible to start videotaping couples who were arguing with each other, and then taking that and analyzing it and trying to figure out what is the common factors here. And that's one of the ways that came up with these 4 things. Again, as I said, these are the most destructive patterns that were found in this research. As a matter of fact, there's one well-known marriage expert who says that he can listen to a couple argue for 3 minutes, really just talk, but particularly argue for 3 minutes, and tell you with 95% accuracy whether or not they will divorce. And it's mainly based on the 4 things we're going to talk about. It's that powerful and that deep. Why do these patterns, what happens? Why are they so bad? Because they erode the positive things that brought us together to start with. When we're dating, everything's great. We see all the positives about each other, the positive feelings. But when you get into these patterns for weeks and months and years, you start forgetting those positives. And you start developing these very negative views of each other. It's really very difficult to survive in the long term. What's the goal of even going through this? The goal is to battle the patterns, not each other. As you'll see when we go through them, they're all about conflict with each other. We want to turn the focus from that conflict with each other to figuring out, what's this pattern? Why are we doing this? And then how do we stop? We want to first understand what the patterns are. Then we want to be able to recognize it. You want to be able to say, oh, yeah, I know exactly what that is. And because once you recognize it, then you can begin to eliminate it. So that's kind of the process we'll use in this class. I love this picture. Do you see the 4 different germs there? Not really, I'm just kidding. I just like that picture. I think it's just one germ, actually. The four germs are escalation, invalidation, negative interpretations, and withdrawal and avoidance. And by this time, your eyes are glassing over and saying, those seem like big words, and why did I pick this breakout anyway? It's going to get more exciting. Just hang on. So we're going to go through each one of these and talk about what does that mean. You probably don't know just from that one word, escalation, what in the world I'm talking about. By the way, the phrase that I think of when talking about escalation is upping the ante. Upping the ante. What does that look like? First relational germ. Escalation, a communication pattern wherein partners respond back and forth negatively so that the fight gets more and more intense. Okay, let's break that down and see how that happens. Summary. Negative comments spiraling into increasing anger. So we're talking and partner says something that hurts my feelings. Well, how do I respond to that? I decide I'm going to up the ante. I'm going to share the pain. I know the button to push over on your side to make you feel some pain. Here we go. I'll fire back. Well, then what happens? Now the other partner feels hurt. Not to be outdone, they up the ante and strike back harder. If you just stop right there, it probably, maybe we could salvage this thing, but it doesn't stop there. Well, now I feel really hurt, so I'm going to come back even harder. And so we end up really saying things that are very, very hurtful. Does this happen only when discussing major issues? No. If that were true, it might not be so bad, but it's amazing. If you've ever done this, if you've done it, when you get done with the shouting match, you think about, what was it we were fighting about? Putting the cap on the toothpaste? Are you kidding? It's usually, a lot of times it's something really trivial. And yet, we're shouting at each other about it. How does that work? You'll find out in role play number 1. This is escalation role play number 1. Let me set it up, and then you guys can perform. Ted, a 34-year-old construction worker, and Wendy, 32, who runs a catering business out of their home. Been married for 8 years. Like many couples, their fights started over small issues. Ted's going to start already sarcastic. Ted?
You think you could put the cap back on the toothpaste?
Oh, like you never forget to put it back.
As a matter of fact, I always put it back.
Oh, I forgot just how compulsive you are. You're right, of course.
I don't even know why I stay with you. You're so negative.
Maybe you shouldn't stay. No one is barring the door.
Not really sure why I do stay anymore.
That's not much of a stretch, really. Starts out with the cap on the toothpaste and ends up talking about walking out the door. That is escalation. So let's talk about how that works. Hopefully you can see it. Reflect back over what you just heard. There's always already that anger, frustration, a little ticked off already going into this conversation. As it goes, I get more frustrated. And then what happens is I get to the point of contempt. Contempt is the 4-letter word that we don't want in our marriages. Why? Contempt is disapproval tinged with disgust. In the moment, I feel disgusted at you. As a matter of fact, it's that point in time where, man, I despise my partner. Communicates rejection, causes hurt, makes closeness impossible. If you think about, if you know your partner feels this way about you, how close are you going to feel? It's just not possible. And think about what this is like if this has been going on for months or years. And the key, security and commitment to the relationship is broken. And the last thing that the end of theirs was, I don't know why I stay with you anyway. Where's the commitment to the marriage? How does it get to that point? That's this escalation pattern. So what do we do about that? How do we short circuit this? The key to it is realizing that what's really happening here is both partners have decided they want to win this argument. It keeps going like this. I'm bringing in reinforcements so I can win this thing. It's hard to admit that that's what we're doing, but that is in fact what motivates this. There's only one solution. First of all, realizing the relationship and that other person is more important than winning this argument. And the hardest part is humbling out. If one partner decides, okay, I can see where this is headed, and they decide to soften, not up the ante, but soften and de-escalate, and say something like, honey, I can understand why you feel that way. How can I do that? What can I do to help? How can we resolve this? Then you see what happens? It doesn't keep going like this. It doesn't start talking about leaving. Communicates, you know what, I care about you. I know we're angry at each other right now, but I care about you. Key is humility. I know we don't like that. That's hard, but that really is. Humility is the answer to this. Being willing for one of the partners to say, I'm not going to continue this. I'm going to soften. I'm going to be the one to de-escalate. I'm going to be the one to be. If you do that, you can stop it. Second, invalidation. Painful put downs. What does this one look like? I love this picture. Invalidation is when the partners put down or disregard the thoughts, feelings, or character of the other person. Put down or disregard. These put downs are personal. It's not about so-and-so. It's about you. And what I'm putting down is something about you, and it's usually something you thought, something you felt, or some part of your character that I'm criticizing and I'm putting down. How does that feel? It's hurtful, personal, it's painful. This belittling makes the partner feel inferior, discredited, and unimportant. How many people want to feel inferior, discredited, and unimportant? Nobody. Those are terrible feelings. And yet we have the power to do that to our spouse. Let's see what it looks like in role play number 2. This one's really pretty simple. I don't have to do a lot of setup. We've got Wendy and Ted. Wendy comes into it very angry.
You missed your doctor's appointment again. I even texted to remind you. You're so irresponsible. I could see you dying and leaving me just like your mother.
Thanks a lot. You know I'm nothing like my father.
He was useless, and so are you.
I'm sorry. I forgot my good fortune to be married to such a paragon of responsibility. You can't even keep your purse organized.
Well, at least I'm not so obsessive about stupid little things.
You're so arrogant.
Okay. I remember the first time I did this, the couple, I think it was one that did that, said, "Were you listening to us earlier?" Let's kind of walk through it and see if we see some of this. Why is this so damaging? Again, this harsh personal criticism, a little piece of advice here, don't ever say you're just like your father or you're just like your mother. That doesn't ever go well. But Wendy goes there. Ted's like, I'm not. And then she says, he was useless and so are you. Whew. Our word again, contempt. Now, think for a second, what was really going on with Wendy? Why was she angry? Because he missed his doctor's appointment and she's afraid that he's not going to be healthy and he's going to die and leave her. But in a couple of sentences, she's destroyed him with, you're useless. But it's motivated really out of, I care about you. Contempt is disapproval. Did you hear her disapproval? Tinged with disgust. Disgusted at you. You're useless. Rejecting, hurt, no way, again, that they're going to feel any closeness. Did you hear the standoff where they left it? At least I'm not like you, so obsessive. You're so arrogant. That's how they ended the argument. That's a validation going both directions. That's why it's damaging. How do we prevent it? The first thing we've got to realize that when we say stuff like that about our partner, it's coming out of a lack of respect for them. We don't really respect them. There's something about it that we're disrespecting in the moment because we're being critical of them. What you have to realize is the relationship is more important than feeling superior. So usually when we criticize somebody else, it's because we're insecure and putting them down makes us feel better, relatively. I feel bad about myself, I criticize you, that makes me feel more powerful, more superior. And what you have to realize is you're killing your relationship. The relationship is more important than that. If you can get that, if in the moment you can see that's what I'm doing, then you can, again, soften and show caring and empathy. If we had time, I have another role play where he actually responds and says, "Oh, I understand why you're concerned about my health." Guess what? No more invalidation because those started having some caring about each other, respectful conversation. Respectful validation is the answer. Criticizing is invalidating the other person, and being disrespectful. Respectful validation is, this is what I love about you. This is what you're good at. the positive things that sometimes go out the window whenever we're in the heat of the moment. We've got to pull those back into mind and be able to adopt this. If we could do freeze frame and ask Wendy, do you really feel like he's useless? No. She's saying that to try to get a response from him. But what the response is, he's feeling defeated. So let's move on to the next one. Negative interpretations, exaggerated false beliefs. This one's a little harder to grasp, but I think after we talk about it and you hear it, you'll be able to understand it as well. Illustrated greatly by this picture. So this is when one partner assumes the other meant something demeaning or negative when they really didn't. So it's a misinterpretation, a negative interpretation of something. So let's break that down. One partner has an exaggerated or false beliefs about the other. Really, the thing that makes it so hurtful is they believe the motives of the other are more negative than is really the case. Even if the intentions of the one partner are good, the other partner is seeing it as being negative. Let's do the role play, and I think you'll be able to see it. Let me set it up. Margot and David have been married for 12 years. They're generally happy with their relationship, yet their discussions at times have been plagued with specific negative interpretation. Every December, they've had trouble deciding whether to travel to her parents for the holidays. Margot believes that David dislikes her parents, but in fact, he's quite fond of them. She has this mistaken belief because of a few incidents that happened early in the marriage, and David has long forgotten about those. Here's how a typical discussion around this holiday travel plans goes. Margot starts.
We should start looking into plane tickets to go visit my parents for the holidays.
I was thinking we may not be able to afford that this year.
My parents are very important to me. Even if you don't like them, I'm going to go.
I'd like to go. Really, I would. I just don't see how we can afford $1,000 in plane tickets and pay the bill for Joey's 4th of Donuts, too.
You can't be honest and admit you just don't want to go, can you? Just admit it. You don't like my parents.
There's nothing to admit. I enjoy visiting your parents. I'm thinking about money here, not your parents.
That's a convenient excuse.
As Margot storms out of the room. Can you hear the frustrating situation that he's in, David's in? No matter what he says or does, his wife believes he doesn't like her parents. Now, the way this works, when you reach a conclusion about somebody, as human beings, what we tend to do is we see the evidence that confirms that what we believe is true. So let's say there are 11 things that happen around this thing. 10 are really pretty positive and supportive of that conclusion not being true, but the 11th one does seem to indicate that it's true. Guess what we do as human beings? We ignore 10 of them because they don't confirm what we thought. But when we hear that 11th one, it's like, aha, see, I told you, you were like that. The psychobabble is, that's confirmation bias. That's just the way that people tend to be. So I've reached this conclusion, and now I've put you in a box, and you can't get out. You can do 11 things, and even if 10 of them are great, I'm going to see the one and say, oh yeah, see, I knew you were like that. No matter how much the evidence is to the contrary, we're stuck. There's nothing the targeted partner can do to break out. You know, he could have talked all day, and she would still have not believed that he really does like her because it's all in her interpretation. Guess how he feels? This is hopeless. How do I ever get out of this? I'm stuck. It's demoralizing. How do we get around this? First of all, we got to realize that the person who makes that negative interpretation, it's very difficult to see that you're doing that. Very difficult. And it's even more difficult to counteract. This is a tough one. The partner making the negative interpretation must be open to admitting they're being overly negative. Again, the H word that we really don't like. You know, maybe I am a little over the top about that. Being open to that. Pushing themselves to look for contrary evidence. You know, the 10 things, maybe I need to think about. Yeah, he did 11 things and 10 of them were really good. Maybe he doesn't feel that way. Maybe that's not accurate. Looking for what's contrary to what we believe rather than the thing that confirms it. And then, in general, being more accepting and less judgmental. See, this is a very judgmental kind of a mindset, is, okay, I've decided what you're like, I'm looking down at you, and you're this lower person that has the problem. We've got to be more accepting and less judgmental and more understanding to be able to overcome this kind of a pattern. The last one is withdrawal and avoidance. Of all four, as a therapist, I see this one probably the most, I think, of any with couples that come into my office. So it's very, very common. Pattern which one partner avoids talking about important issues, or one person repeatedly attempts to talk but the other refuses or shuts down when the important topics arise. I appreciate this picture because in this picture, she's the one that's drawing. Probably 70 or more % of the time it's the man. I'm sorry guys, but that's just, we don't like conflict, and I think that's a big part of why when she comes to us with this important topic to talk about, we tend to back off. So let's go through it. One partner feels this is an important issue. This needs to be discussed. And guess what? Right now. The other partner, do we have to talk about this right now? You know? The other partner hates conflict. They avoid rather than engage. Engage is an important word. What the pursuer is looking for, please engage with me. Please, let's talk about this. The withdrawer, I don't want to engage. I don't want to talk about this right now. Probably because I feel it's feeling like conflict to me. Guess what happens? When one person has something that's important they want to talk about, and the other person withdraws, what does the pursuer do? They start talking louder. You're not listening to me, so I'm going to talk louder, and there's going to be an edge to my voice. They think the other partner doesn't care. It's important to me, and I want to talk about it, and you don't care. See, you never want to talk to me about this. Angry. They pursue more. The withdrawer withdraws more, and there's this cycle. The pursued partner retreats even more for protection, and that's how it feels. It feels like I'm being attacked, so I'm protecting by withdrawing. I think the problem with that is it doesn't protect me. Let's do role play number 4. Paula is a 28-year-old realtor. Jeff, a 32-year-old loan officer, just married for 3 years. They have a 2-year-old baby girl, Tanya, whom they both adore. They were concerned that the tension in their relationship was starting to affect their daughter. So Paula really wants to talk about this. Paula?
When are we going to talk about how you are handling your anger?
Can't this wait? I've got to get these taxes done.
I brought this up at least 5 times already. No, it can't wait.
What's to talk about anyway? It's none of your business.
Tanya is my business. I'm afraid that you may lose your temper and hurt her, and you won't do a damn thing to learn to better deal with your anger.
Look, I love Tanya. There's no problem here.
As he leaves the room.
You have to get some help. You can't just stick your head in the sand.
I'm not going to discuss anything with you when you're like this.
Like what? It doesn't matter if I'm calm or frustrated. You won't talk to me about anything important. Tanya's having problems, and you have to face that. Well?
I'm going out to have a drink and get some peace and quiet.
Talk to me now. I'm tired of you leaving when we were talking about something important.
I'm not talking. You are. Actually, you're yelling. See you later.
As Jeff goes out the door. They really were on different pages in terms of, they were both kind of concerned about Tanya, right? They both love her, but this went very bad. Let's kind of walk through it and see if you see some of these things. The pursuing partner believes that the withdrawing partner doesn't care. Did you hear that in the conversation? It's not that he has to get the taxes done or whatever. It's that you don't care. The withdrawing partner believes the pursuing partner wants to fight. That's why she's coming to me. She's always bringing these things up. Guess how they both feel? Alone, misunderstand, and unfulfilled. They're at completely different places in how they view what happened, but they both feel the same way. They don't feel understood by the other. They feel alone. He's not listening to me. I can't talk to her. And unfulfilled. You can't get along. That's why it's so damaging. And imagine that going on for months and years over every topic. It'll kill the marriage. Who even wants to stay in a relationship like that? That's how you start feeling is, why should I stay in this? Do I want to be alone, misunderstood, and unfulfilled? That's not why I got married. So it takes away the positives. It takes away our motivation. So how do we deal with that? We have to realize that what's going on is there's an independence here in the two partners. So the guy's feeling like, I can decide not to deal with this. I don't like it. It may be important to me, but I don't like the way she's coming at me. And there's this, and even on the pursuer part, there's an independence there. The key is they've got to realize they've got to function as a team. We're not independent. We can't just decide we're not going to engage. If something's important to our partner, we need to listen. We need to talk about it. Disengaging is not an option. avoiding issues only makes them worse. I guarantee you, she said she's tried to bring this up 5 times, and he's not willing to talk about it. There'll be another 5 or 50 or something, and it's just going to get worse. That's how it works. If we don't talk things through, then it gets worse. And lastly, dealing with conflict is not bad. It's uncomfortable, but it's also unavoidable. And again, the pre-marriage thing that he was talking about, I try to emphasize to couples, you are going to have conflict. Don't avoid it. Figure out how to constructively talk about these things. It's unavoidable. If you try to avoid it, it's just going to make it worse. Those are the 4 germs. Let me quickly go through a couple other. This book is kind of a classic on marriage, Fighting for Your Marriage, which is based on research. It has a lot of really good ways to approach these things and solutions for what we've tried to show today. 2 of them is calling a timeout and what they call a speaker-listener technique. And timeout is just really what it sounds like. When you realize that one of these germs is happening, this pattern, you've got to stop because you know it's going to turn out badly. You see you're going down the wrong path. You need to call a timeout. What that means is let's take a little while and let things calm down, and then let's talk about it. 10 minutes, an hour. The key is if you call a timeout, you have to establish when you're going to come back and talk about it, or the other partner is going to say, that's just your way of not dealing with this. It's okay to say, I think if we continue to do this, we're going to hurt each other's feelings. Let's just calm down. Again, there's a lot more to this than that, but that's basically what it's talking about. The other technique is what they call speaker-listener, which is slowing down the conversation and defining the roles and say, okay, I realize this is a touchy conversation. Tell you what, I'll be the listener. You say whatever you need to say, and I'm going to listen. And just so you know that I heard you, I'm going to summarize back to you what you said. And see, what that does is that takes the pressure off one party because they know they have time to say what they need to say. And they know they're going to be heard, right? Because he's got to listen close enough to report it back. You do that until you understand what your partner's saying. She could say, kind of, but not quite, here's what I really meant, and you get that right. Then guess what? You change roles. And then he becomes the speaker. Says, okay, well, here's how I see it. And he talks, and she repeats back. Now, that sounds really mechanistic and like, how can we possibly do that? It only takes a couple times of doing it like that for you to get the feeling of what conversation should be like, give and take. And you don't have to be so rigid about it. But what it does is it slows it down. It takes the emotion out of it because, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about it calmly. Got plenty of time. You don't need to be angry, rush. We're both going to be heard. And then we can talk it through so you avoid the whole escalation and invalidation that sometimes is in the spur of the moment type of conversation. There's lots of other things you can do. Often, when couples just realize these patterns and they can say, we're doing it again, even if they don't remember the name, you don't have to remember the name, but if you see we're escalating, I'm going to soften and be more understanding. And that resolves it. The goal for today, hopefully you feel like you understand what these are. You can kind of recognize them when you hear them. What were some of the ways that we could stop doing this? That's really what I was hoping to get you to see today.